Football tournaments are remembered for a number of reasons. The skill and ability on show, the moments of pure drama, superstar players at their peak, and home success.
It was magical because we were in collusion. And on the pitch, we had a perfect understanding of each other.
The European Championship of 1984 had all the ingredients.
It was a Brazilian style of game. They used to call the national French team the Little Brazil or the European Brazil.
France, with Michel Platini dictating the play, triumphed.
All of the big teams that have won big competitions have a player that stands out. It's the talent, the ingenuity that makes the difference. And in this case, it was Michel Platini who made the difference in the Euros.
And in triumphing, the French paved the way for future success.
Our generation, we are the fruits of the generation of Platini and Tigana.
In 1958, inspired by striker Just Fontaine, France finished third in the World Cup in Sweden, losing out to eventual winners Brazil. It would be more than 20 years before they hit such heights again.
The success of that French national team in '58 was very much unexpected. The Players' Trade Union was only created in 1961, professional trade union. We played professional football in France, but it was very much ruled like an amateur game. We didn't have the structure to take advantage of the advances made by the generation of '58.
I think it was due to the work that was carried out in the 1970s and the 1980s in our training centres, which enabled us to develop a lot of younger, more competitive and more complete players. I think it's also down to the fact that France had a lot of youth, the strength of those young players, and the experience of the older players who contributed to the national side.
In 1978, an inexperienced French squad travelled to Argentina for the World Cup finals. Little was expected of them, and they duly failed to progress beyond the group stage, but the experience proved invaluable.
We came back from the tournament thinking, actually, not only can we qualify for that, we should have a right go at it. It was an extraordinary moment of realizing that we had this potential in us as a footballing nation.
A young squad needed a coach to forge a winning team and a winning spirit. That task fell to Michel Hidalgo.
He was a manager who put all of his faith in the players, who was prepared to listen, who always took on opinions, but one who took action. For me, he wasn't exactly like a father, but he wasn't far from it. He was someone who felt affection for the players, who was very interesting and gave the players a lot of confidence.
And with more potential than any other member of that squad was 23-year-old Michel Platini, a player who would shape the future of French football.
French football needed a leader like him, a boss who plays in the best championship and who is the best French player. Why is he the best French player? Because of his performances on the pitch, because his game is the best. He performed well on the pitch, he was a decisive player, scored goals and free kicks. He was the leader in the group with his words and actions, and he was the spokesperson for the team. When he arrived on the scene, that is when French football started slowly to show its potential.
For me, he instilled a desire in us to win, which he himself had picked up at Juventus. Also because he was a very effective player, very effective, whether it was passing the ball to others or finishing moves himself.
You could play with Michel with your eyes closed. I was a striker, and I knew if I called for the ball, it would reach my feet straight away. It was fabulous.
Everything went through Michel Platini. You look at his goal-scoring record, you think we're talking about a genuine number 10 here. It's prodigious.
Et puis, c'était
There were two generations of players. The old ones like Jean-Marc Guilou or Henri Michel, and our new generation headed by Michel Platini. Michel stood out straight away and became the leader, even amongst those more experienced players like Guilou or Michel.
The aspect that struck me the most was his winning mentality. When you played in his team, you had to give absolutely everything. You couldn't even lose a game of cards when you were playing with him. He always wanted to win.
I wouldn't say that it was a self-managed team. It would be ridiculous. Michel Valco had obviously a great role to play in that. But it's quite clear that as soon as we had Michel Platini. Michel Platini was the thinker. Michel Platini was the man who was at the heart of absolutely everything.
In 1982, the French travelled to Spain for the World Cup finals with the confidence to make an impression. And they did just that. After beating the likes of Austria, Northern Ireland and Kuwait, they reached their first semi-final for 24 years against West Germany in Seville.
They were so close to winning, but at the same time, so far. They nearly touched victory, but it all went wrong. Everything got ruined during that extraordinary match of the World Cup semi-final between France and Germany in Seville. It was one of the greatest dramatic matches of international football history.
Pierre Littbarski opened the scoring. Michel Platini equalised from the penalty spot. And with 30 minutes remaining, Patrick Battiston was sent clear. West Germany's goalkeeper, Harald Schumacher, raced out to meet him. And in one of the World Cup's most shocking moments, Battiston was left unconscious.
People would say, anger, but it was disbelief was the main emotion. How is it possible not to send him off? How is it possible not to send him off? But that was only after we were reassured of the state of health of Patrick Battiston, because we were like Michel Platini, who, accompanied him, holding Battiston's hand on the stretcher and thinking, is he dead? Is he dying? And I think we were all in such shock. And when then we saw the images again, and we were so angry.
The emotion was also on the pitch. When we saw Patrick leave like that, we got worried. But we didn't really see the accident because we were so much into the game.
Despite Schumacher's reprieve, and without the influential Battiston on the pitch, France took the game into extra time. 2 quick goals put them on the verge of their first ever World Cup final.
The highlight, I think, is Alain Girard's goal. I think we all remember that because I think we were all doing what he was doing in our living rooms, running around with our arms in the air. It was a moment of such joy because we thought then that's in the bag.
But the Germans replied with 2 goals in 6 minutes of their own. Penalties were required. West Germany missed first, but both Didier Six and Maxime Bossis failed to score. The Germans were through. France were devastated.
We played well during the tournament, but we missed the final because we lacked a realistic approach.
It's very difficult to be defeated in the semi-finals. But I felt that this generation of players started to mature, gained experience and started to play well. I think French football started to be confident and competitive on a European and international level.
2 years later, France had the perfect opportunity. Founded in 1960 by Frenchman Henri Delaunay, the European Championship had become by 1984 second only to the World Cup in terms of footballing importance, and that year's tournament was to be held in France.
Given the huge advantage it is to be at home, given what had happened in 1982, I think we were logically among the favourites for that tournament.
It was a Brazilian style of game. They used to call the national French team the Little Brazil or the European Brazil. It was a simple way of playing, very technical and collective.
We were full of confidence, with Michel Platini, who had already achieved some great things with Juventus, and who brought us a winning mentality and plenty of experience.
As hosts, France had no qualification campaign, so settled instead on high-profile friendlies. On the 29th of February in Paris, they took on England and won 2-0. But more significantly, the game introduced one of the finest midfields ever seen in world football. Le Carré Magique, the Magic Square, was born.
The Magic Square. We had a strong connection. We all knew what we had to do on the pitch, and we all knew how to play.
Luis Fernandez, incredible energy, ferocious tackler, box-to-box player. Jean Tigana, again, incredible energy, with perhaps a little bit more imagination than Luis. I would say that. Gires, who is unpredictable, technically superb.
When you play with creative players such as Gires, Platini and Tigana, you have three guys in the side who have the technique and skills to lead the team the right way. My job when I play midfield, my aim is to win as many balls as possible, to give the team a break, and then allow the creative players, Tigana, Platini or Gires, to play their natural game for the team.
There was a lot of play off the ball, a lot of movement in an attempt to find solutions and to work their way into spaces. When it reaches the stage that you make a pass and you know that you're not going to lose the ball and that the move is going to continue, you have a great deal of confidence and you can attack in numbers.
I can't play like Platini. Platini can't play like Luis Fernandez. Gires can't play like Luis Fernandez, and Luis can't play like Gires. But Platini needs Fernandez. Fernandez needs Tigana and Gires. We all know that our strength is that magic square.
The French were relaxed and fully confident that they had a team capable of winning. As well as the much talked about Magic Square, they also possessed one of the finest defences in the tournament.
It was a very consistent defence who worked very well together in terms of positioning and repositioning, and also individually in one-on-one situations. These were guys like Maxime Bossis and the rest of them. They never wanted to be beaten. They never wanted to get knocked out.
It was not Platini plus 10 others. That would be unfair. But on the other hand, those 10 others couldn't have achieved what they did without Michel Platini.
We had the opportunity to play 7 or 8 friendly matches, and we won all of them, by the way. That gave us a lot of confidence. With the experience of the older players who had survived that World Cup semi-final, and also the contribution of certain young players.
France began the tournament against Denmark. A sole Michel Platini strike settled French nerves, and from then on the team, and Platini in particular, looked unstoppable. He struck back-to-back hat-tricks. First, Belgium were demolished 5-0. And then Yugoslavia were defeated 3-2.
He scored amazing goals, free kicks, with the head, with the left foot, with the right foot. He was cruising in this competition like no other player ever managed to do in any other competition.
We knew we had a golden ball player in our team, Michel Platini. We knew he was the best player for that season. And on that day, he would be the man who would make the difference.
France went into the semi-finals to face a strong Portugal. And what transpired was one of the finest matches this tournament had ever seen.
Yes, it was the turning point. That semi-final against Portugal in Marseille was the exact opposite of the semi-final against West Germany in Seville. It was the exact opposite scenario.
There are a lot of memories. Both the mood and the atmosphere in the stadium were amazing.
Left back Jean-François Domergue opened the scoring with his first ever international goal. But Jordão's equaliser sent the game into extra time. Jordão again gave Portugal the lead, but in front of a partisan crowd, France dug deep. Domergue scored his second to equalise. But with time running out and penalties looming, Platini scored the winner. France were through to their first international final.
I had already started to think about penalties. And the winner, which came right at the very last second, enabled me to release my joy because the match was over. I let myself be overcome by the emotions. I fell to my knees. The whole stadium, I might even say the whole country, was in harmony.
There was that strength, that willpower, that energy. France refused to be defeated. France wanted to surpass itself. The whole team, Michel Platini included, had that amazing spirit that enabled them to win. 2 years earlier, they would probably have been defeated.
On the 27th of June 1984, the French team awoke, knowing they were just 90 minutes from success. Rather than being nervous, the side were confident they would fulfill their destiny. Under the sure hand of Michel Hidalgo, there was no doubt in their minds. They had the whole country behind them, and they knew their future was in their own hands. Their opponents in the final would be Spain.
When we began to approach the capital, there were blue shirts everywhere. There were fans absolutely everywhere. Over the last 500 meters or so, there was a crowd of supporters. Incredible. It was hot, the weather was good. It was almost as if the game had been decided before stepping out onto the pitch. We couldn't imagine losing this final.
A cautious first half did little to dent French optimism, and they duly took the lead on 57 minutes. Little surprised that Platini was the man to do it, but it required an unfortunate error by goalkeeper Luis Arconada, and with seconds left on the clock, Bruno Bellon secured victory. France had won their first ever international title.
At the final whistle, all the pressure, the tension, the emotions just fell completely away from us. We were free all of a sudden, and it was something we shared with everyone. It was immense.
It was France's first ever title in a team sport, their first ever win. Pierre de Coubertin used to say, the important thing is not the triumph, but the struggle. And that's how we French used to think. But since the 1980 generation, the Platini generation, we managed to bring a new spirit in football with players and coaches willing to fight to win a competition and not just take part in it.
There was, of course, an explosion of joy because, after all, this was our first title, you know. in a long and not necessarily distinguished history.
This undoubtedly was a great team, but one star shone brighter than any other.
Every great team has a leader. Maradona for Argentina, Cruyff for Holland, Beckenbauer for Germany in 1972. Every national team and generation of football always relies on great players. They're the ones who make the difference for their country.
Platini was floating on a cloud. He scored 9 goals out of the 14 scored by France.
If you're going to be champions of Europe, you need a great team. And yes, he was surrounded by great players, but I must admit that it was thanks to him that we won the European Championship.
From 78, it's 8 years, so again you have, that's the thing which we had a cycle at the heart of it, and the continuum was Michel Platini.
2 years later, France went to Mexico in search of their first ever World Cup win. The group stage was negotiated with ease, as was a second-round tie with Italy, but the quarter-final offered a different prospect. France took on one of the favourites, Brazil.
In our generation, France always had a great team. They had players like Platini, Tigana, Gires, Fernandes. A great team. I always liked playing against teams who were at the same sort of level as us and played with the same spirit. You knew it would always be a real show.
And so it proved. An enthralling game saw Brazil take the lead through Careca. Platini equalised 5 minutes before half-time. The second half saw end-to-end action, but neither side could find a breakthrough. Even Zico missed from the penalty spot, his kick saved by Joël Batz.
We should have played the game on another day. World Cups always have this need to rush. Making money is more important than the quality of the spectacle. If you draw, I think there should be a replay. Have a bit of patience. To decide a game on penalties is terrible.
But a shootout it was. Socrates missed the first, but Platini, so often the French saviour, also failed to score. Brazil were unable to take advantage, and it was left to Luis Fernandes to score the winning penalty. France were through to their second consecutive World Cup semi-final.
The pity is that it sapped the energy of the French players too much for them to be able to give their all as they could in the semi-final again against the Germans, which was the one hurdle too many. And it never felt right. It never felt like we were going to win against them.
Glorious failure for the French, but their European Championship win and the steps they'd taken in international football remained a source of pride. With Le Carré Magique reaching the twilight of their careers, it was the last hurrah for one of football's greatest international teams. 12 years later, the French hosted a major football tournament again. With Zinedine Zidane in the Platini role, France won their first ever World Cup, beating Brazil 3-0 in the final. It was a success built on the foundations laid in 1984.
Our generation, we are the fruits of the generation of Platini and Tigana.
They were essential, central, pivotal. Take your thesaurus, look for all the synonyms. Without that generation of 78, 86, there would have been no 1998 generation.
We were like the Americans who left the East to head west and who crossed the Rockies and other deserts. We were like pioneers.
The Platini generation helped coaches to train young players with a new psychology that said, now we can win titles because Platini's generation did it. It was the trigger for football and sports in France.
I'm going to be sacrilegious here. I think it was a better team than the 1998 World Cup winning team.
As we were the first to win an international title, I would put us first. We set the example. The French side was just like the square that made up this team. Magic.